Most visited and famous in all the world, burning from the inside out. Part of the spire and the roof collapsed in the flames, the smoke visible from across the Seine River. Firefighters working into the night battling the blaze. Its cause still unknown, but authorities say it appears to have started in an area under construction.
Now back here in the U.S., President Trump and Vice President Pence are offering their support. The president tweeting, "So horrible to watch the massive fire at Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris." And Vice President Pence tweeted, "Notre Dame is an iconic symbol of faith to people all over the world, and it is heartbreaking to see a house of God in flames." Our thoughts and prayers are with the firefighters on the scene and all of the people in Paris.
Now, CBN News spoke with Jennifer Dale, who is visiting Paris.
We could see the smoke, but we could not see flames, and it was a lot of smoke. It was gray. Usually, in my experience, usually the dark smoke comes first, and as the firefighters arrive on the scene and they start getting control of the fire, it turns white. And I kept looking and hoping that it would turn white, and it didn't. And really sad. You could tell this was a piece of of their lives that that obviously have been here for a very, very long time, and it just seems really, really sad that something like this could happen.
And senior international correspondent Dale Hurd joins us now for more. Dale, obviously a shocking loss. Talk about the significance and the importance of the Cathedral of Notre Dame.
Well, I guarantee you they're already talking about rebuilding this. That is how important it is to France. Built in the 1100s, I mean, it is the heart and soul of the nation. This may seem like a strange thing to bring up, but when the French patriot Dominique Venner was so upset that France was losing its way because of gay marriage and Muslim immigration, he went to Notre Dame, to the pulpit, and killed himself, because it is the symbol of France. And it's ironic because church attendance is so low, and yet, I mean, that is the home of the French soul.
Dale, the cathedral is 800 years old. It survived World War II. What does this loss mean for the city of Paris?
Oh, yeah, it's unthinkable. It's got to be for them as 9/11 was for us. They're watching it and not believing their eyes. But trust me, it's going to be rebuilt. It won't be the same. My memories of Notre Dame are, of course, all of the ancient things inside, and some of those are gone forever. But it's going to rise again.
Yeah, Dale, so what happens next when we see something like this? Where do the French people go from here?
Well, let's talk about the rumors of terrorism. That's not being reported by officials. It looks certainly like an accident from the renovation going on inside. Some of the rumors stem from the fact that on Friday, a French Muslim was sentenced in a plot to blow up Notre Dame, but that has nothing to do with this. Some people are trying to tie the two things together. Their officials are going to have to go through the ashes, figure out how it started, and I'm sure, because I've been to Notre Dame several times, security is very tight. It's not easy to get in there and destroy it. This is probably an accident related to renovation, and they'll sort that out.
All right, Dale Hurd for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And back here at home, the race for 2020 is heating up as South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Budaj officially announces he's running for president.
Yeah, the long-shot candidate who's been steadily climbing in the polls made it official Sunday. At 37 years old, he is the youngest candidate in the race so far.
This time, it's not just about winning an election. It's about winning an era. Not just about the next 4 years. It's about preparing our country for a better life in 2030, in 2040, and in the year 2054, when, God willing, I get to be the same age as our current president. Principles that will guide my campaign for president are simple enough to fit on a bumper sticker: freedom, security, and democracy.
Mayor Pete, as he likes to be called, isn't the only candidate hoping to gain speed. Senator Cory Booker launched a national campaign tour just this weekend. Booker has been down in the polls, but he's hoping his new Justice for All tour will give him a boost and drum up grassroots enthusiasm. His campaign push will have him visiting early voting over the next 10 weeks. In his first speech of the tour, Booker portrayed himself as someone who could unify the political divide, saying, quote, "I learned that the only way to overcome the really tough challenges is by extending grace, finding common ground, and working together."
As it stands in recent polling, Booker is in the middle of the pack. Joe Biden leads in a recent University Monmouth poll with 27% of likely Democratic caucus voters supporting him. Bernie Sanders is coming in second with 16%, and Budaj rounds out the top three with 9%.
And the best of the rest, Senators Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris at 7%. Beto O'Rourke and Amy Klobuchar are also pulling in single digits, with Cory Booker close behind. And in 2016, President Trump took home 81% of the white evangelical vote, leaning into issues important to conservatives. 3 years later, and that support really hasn't changed much, Jenna.
Yeah, and now Democrats are trying to win over some of those Christians, hoping that they can take them away by making faith really more of an issue this time around. Here's Amber Strong.
Religion and politics have gone hand in hand with many conservative politicians over the years. But now a new wave of Democratic hopefuls are breaking out their faith credentials as part of their 2020 campaigns.
If you got a problem with who I am, your problem is not with me. Your quarrel, sir, is with my Creator.
Perhaps none more than South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg. The Afghan war vet, who is Episcopalian and in a same-sex marriage, is garnering headlines by going directly after Vice President Pence, Trump, and the evangelicals who support him.
The hypocrisy is unbelievable. Here you have somebody who not only acts in a way that is not consistent with anything that I hear in Scripture, but also personally how you're supposed to conduct yourself. Not chest-thumping, look-at-me-ism, but humbling yourself before others.
Washington Post political analyst Eugene Scott says there's a multi-pronged strategy with Buttigieg.
A lot of attention has been paid to the rise of the nuns or the religiously unaffiliated. There's a hostility a lot of them tend to have towards faith for various reasons, and some of them do so because they feel like there's no room for them within faith. And I think what Buttigieg is doing is actually a bit evangelical in the sense, trying to let these people know that there could be room for them in a Christian faith.
Other candidates are taking a more low-key approach.
You saw somebody who was hungry, and it moved you to act. I believe we are called on to act.
I was raised in a church where my mom taught Sunday school, and I'll never forget learning that verse, that faith without works is dead.
They're praying with their pastors and making the public case for their personal beliefs.
The gospel really doesn't leave anybody out because, are you feeding the poor? Are you helping the sick? Are you visiting the incarcerated? I would argue that Democrats are often better on those issues than Republicans.
Scott says the 2020 candidates are determined to correct past mistakes.
President Barack Obama actually was praised a bit for actually trying to reach out to some more conservative evangelicals, but those efforts seem not to transcend into the Clinton campaign, and I think a lot of Democrats have learned from that.
Former Obama faith advisor Michael Ware says the faith discussions are an attempt to convince voters to take a second look.
In the Trump era, we're also seeing an increasing willingness from Democratic candidates to be critical of certain expressions of religious faith that have aligned with Donald Trump.
While that message may resonate with the political left and unaffiliated, it's a long way to winning over conservatives who support the president.
If you really want to tap in to that 81% of white evangelical support for Donald Trump and you want to pull away a percentage or two, you're going to have to talk about some other issues. Abortion, religious liberty, marriage, a lot of those type of issues. The problem is Democrats don't want to talk about those issues because they are on the wrong side of those issues when it comes to pulling away that white evangelical support.
Even still, CBN News analyst David Brody says there are potential pitfalls for Trump that make evangelical support crucial.
Donald Trump won 81% of white evangelicals in 2016. If that number gets down to 80%, 79%, he will lose the presidency of the United States. There are a lot of white evangelicals that, hey, look, ultimately, they are concerned also about character. Yes, the issues are very important to them, but there are some, a small subset of those white evangelicals who say character, actually, when it comes to the candidate, much more important than the issues.
Ware says he's excited about the possibilities, but has a warning for fellow Democrats.
What I do think Democrats need to be careful about, and Buttigieg has done some of this too, is using religion as a weapon. Not just talking about how faith has positively influenced you, but sort of taking an antagonistic posture towards the faith and faith expressions of others. Now, you can certainly critique Vice President Pence on policy.
Whatever the outcome, this much is true. The faith talk and all the potential baggage that comes with it, good or bad, has only just begun. Amber Strong, CBN News in Washington.
Thank you, Amber. Well, Eric Sapp, founder of the Elason Group, and David, join us now to talk more about the 2020 Democrats and faith. Eric, to you first. Pete Buttigieg, what do you make of his play toward faith, and do you think evangelicals will buy into it?
Well, my experience working with the faith community is evangelicals want authenticity, and I think that's been the key with Mayor Pete, is he's authentic. It's real. His faith, clearly, he's not talking off of talking points. He's talking off his lived experience, but more explicitly, the fruits of kind of everything he's doing, how he's talking. It's clear he's been listening, and it's clear that kind of the way he engages, his openness, the fact that he's trying to unify people, that's a message I think can resonate.
And David, as Eric was putting it, Mayor Pete uses faith kind of like a weapon. Do you see this helping him or actually backfiring?
Well, I would say if it's a weapon, it's an authentic weapon. I mean, you know, he's using it because he believes it. And I think that's really an important point to distinguish. I mean, people can typically tell a fake. And whether or not you agree with Buttigieg, I'll get it right eventually, or don't, you know, he is where he is on certain issues. And I think the key issue for him will be compassion. He'll talk about Matthew 25 a lot. He'll talk about love your neighbor, kind of what President Obama was doing. And when you talk about compassion and faith, compared to what Donald Trump has been doing with, many of his critics will say, anti-compassion type policies, then you have a recipe to forge ahead in the faith category.
Yeah, but what about issues like abortion and marriage? How does he get around these really tough issues that most Democrats do not want to touch?
Well, I think he'll be good in the primaries for now, but that's a question for the general election if it gets there. Look, I mean, in terms of the winning the Democrat nomination, he's not going to have to worry about it. This idea about being okay with late-term abortion, I hate to phrase it that way, but in essence, that is what it is. I mean, he's pretty much in lockstep with a lot of these folks, and so I don't think that's going to come up. The marriage issue, once again, general election, different story. So I think the key for Buttigieg or anybody is the Democrat candidate that can kind of moderate right now and kind of play to the faith crowd, but moderate at the same time will do well if they end up becoming the general election nominee.
And Eric, I know we're talking about Buttigieg right now, but what other candidates do you feel are doing a really good job, an effective job, talking about their faith and reaching the faith voter?
Well, I think we've actually seen a surprising, in a way, compared to some of these past years, embrace. Cory Booker's been talking about it, saying, you know, Christ is the center of his life. Talking about the role of prayer for a nation. Kamala Harris was bringing these things in. So, and we're seeing candidates up and down the ticket also engaging on these issues. The key is they're starting to reach out. They're listening. They're not just going off of a TikTok of talking points, but each of them sounds different. And to me, as I hear it, that's the key, because then it's authentic. If you're talking, again, trying to say, this is what we have to say to get these voters, if you're trying to use it as a weapon, it's going to fail. When you speak from your heart, you can win.
Do you think they're looking back to 2016, seeing how President Trump was very effective reaching the evangelical vote? And even now, these past 2 years, he talks about his faith a lot. I go to many press conferences in the Rose Garden, East Room, and he mentions God.
I think Trump creates a very useful foil on the faith side, because the Bible talks about how we should be known by our fruits, those that cry my name, Lord, Lord, but do nothing for the least of these, you know, how we're going to be judged. I think that in that sense, it could be looking to Trump, but what's happening clearly is these are candidates who are running in part because of their faith. And when they're speaking from what matters to them, whether it's faith or anything else, that's what voters need to hear.
Yeah. This question for both of you. David, we'll start with you this time. Where are these candidates really missing opportunities to reach faith voters, and how big or organized is this so-called religious left that we hear about?
Well, I'd be curious to get Eric's take on the religious left. I think he probably dabbles in that a little bit more than I do. Having said that, there's no doubt that the energy and the verve right now, and has always been, the white conservative evangelical community, it's what has propelled Donald Trump, what propelled others before him. It is, in essence, they are lockstep together with the Republican Party. I know that causes a lot of people some concern, but the truth of the matter is I believe that the Democrat candidate, whoever that ends up being in the general, this is the key, not in the Democrat primary, but in the general, will have to somehow figure out a way to play and get a percentage or two from that white conservative evangelical community. I think you can get as much as you want out of the progressive religious left, but I think there's a ceiling there. I mean, I don't think you're going to win national elections there. I think you have to pick off some of Trump's base. And I think it's possible on the character issue. That might be where the play could be.
Yeah. Eric, what about you? How organized is this religious left?
Well, I don't think we're going to win elections with the religious left, but I think more importantly to your viewers, we're not going to win as a country if this becomes religious left versus religious right. What we need to get back to is a more holistic gospel conversation, and that's what should excite people about what we're hearing right now out of so many Democratic candidates. A return to compassion, to grace. I mean, this week of all weeks, when we're in this point between a celebration of God's people saying we want the warrior king to rule and bring God's authority versus what we know Jesus stood for on the cross, conversation about grace, more Democrats looking at service, that's going to be the key to success for our party, but more importantly, what we need as a nation. And I think for the Christian witness, it's so vital.
Eric, David, thank you guys both for stopping in to talk to us today.
Thanks. Nice
really
to be back.
It. Definitely. Well, the long-awaited Mueller Report is about to be made public. We'll tell you when to expect it when we come back.
Well, after much anticipation, the long-awaited Mueller Report is expected to be released this coming Thursday. Testifying on Capitol Hill last week, Attorney General Bill Barr said he would release the findings of the Russia investigation within a week. That means it should come in the next few days. The version Barr releases to Congress will have redactions, including foreign intelligence information and info on ongoing investigations.
And turns out today is the last day to file federal taxes. Ahead of today, the IRS said they were still waiting for some 50 million people to file their taxes. If you're one of those and you aren't going to make the mad dash to finish by today, the IRS is recommending filing for an extension. If you actually find that info on the irs.com.org website. If you don't file today and you don't get an extension, you could be charged with a late filing fee. And now we're joined by Stephen Moore, former economic advisor for the Trump campaign and President Trump's pick for the Federal Reserve Board. Steve, thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Ben. Good to be with you both.
Today, good day to have you here. It is tax day. President Trump is in Minnesota to talk about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Break it down for us. What does it mean?
Well, it's been powerful fuel for the economy, no question about it. I mean, the economy keeps picking up steam. We've gotten really great jobs numbers. We now have 7 million more job openings than people to fill them. So it's been, I think, a big success when it comes to generating, more jobs and higher wages for workers. And then, this big issue now is how much did people actually save? A middle-class person, let's say, makes between $40,000 and $100,000. We just did a big analysis at the Heritage Foundation where we're estimating, but depending on everyone's individual circumstance, the average middle-class family saved about $1,500 to $3,000 a year. Now, that depends on how many kids you have, because we increased by $500 per child the credit. So if you had 4 kids, that's $2,000 right there. But this idea that middle-class people are paying more taxes, you'd be very hard-pressed to find anyone in the middle class who actually pays more taxes as a result of this bill.
Steve, new polling shows that many Americans, they actually feel like they didn't get a tax cut. What do you say to them?
Well, the main reason for that is people are used to getting a big refund, in April because they pay too much taxes. And we changed the withholding tables throughout 2018, so people actually got more money in their paycheck each week and each month because we wanted people to feel the effect right away. So I think it's mostly just a mirage. People are saying, wait a minute, I got a bigger refund last year. Well, that's because you got a bigger paycheck throughout the year. And there are very few people, as I said, in the middle class pay more taxes. You know, by the way, when you include the wage increases that people have gotten, the bonuses, the increases in benefits, you're talking about, for a lot of families, $3,000 or $4,000 more take-home pay as a result of this tax cut. We're proud of it. I think most Americans would never want to see it, you know, go away because they would face higher taxes if we repealed it.
Tax cuts 2.0, do you see lawmakers picking that back up before the end of the year?
I'd love to see it. I mean, I think there's there's just things that needed to be cleaned up in the tax bill, and I'd like to see, you know, even more relief for middle-class people. As you said, you know, a lot of middle-class people say they wanted a bigger tax relief. I do, too. I just finished my taxes. I don't know about you guys, but it is daunting, and, you know, I wrote a big check to the IRS. How about you guys?
My wife did, I did not.
I think we avoided it.
My wife wrote a big check.
Yeah, balance each other out. Steve, let's talk about your the Federal Reserve nomination appointment. Congratulations, first of all. If you do get appointed, if you do get through the process, what do you want to do?
Well, so first of all, a lot of people are probably, what does the Federal Reserve Board do? I mean, probably a lot of people are confused about that. You know, the Federal Reserve controls the monetary system of the U.S. government, and I've been critical on this show and others of some of the policies that have come out of the Federal Reserve of late. But what I'm in favor of is maintaining stable prices, because, you know, the purpose of having currency, I mean, why do you have dollars and $5 and $10 and $20 in your pocketbook or in your purse? It's because, you know, that currency holds value over time. And so I'm a big believer in maintaining a stable currency, but I also believe, and this is kind of I think a threat to sort of the conventional wisdom there, that when you have more people working and more people earning bigger paychecks and producing more, that does not produce inflation. Growth does not cause inflation. We've got too many Keynesians who believe that, you know, if you have increased economic growth, we have to pull back on the money supply because that's going to cause prices to rise. But, you know, the way my buddy Art Laffer says is very, you know, puts it very well. If the economy is producing more apples, the price of apples falls, it doesn't rise. So I'll probably disrupt some of the conventional wisdom over there, and I think that's one of the reasons Donald Trump selected me. I mean, you know, Donald Trump likes to, challenge conventional wisdoms.
And when President Trump tweeted out his pick, your pick, critics pretty much came out of the woodwork. Many are saying you are not qualified for the Fed. They're bringing up your dispute with the IRS. Yep. What has been your response?
So I have 35 years experience as a top economic policy advisor to presidents and to many members of Congress. I have kind of the street smart experience on economic policy. I do not have a PhD. I think a lot of people think maybe there are too many PhDs running this. I think it would be good to have more people with practical experience and people like businessmen and women over at the Fed. So I think it would be a positive thing. And the groupthink is the kind of mentality that got us into some of these financial crises in the first place.
Stephen Moore with the Heritage Foundation, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Good to have you.
Happy New Year.
Coming up, a look at the continuing crisis in Venezuela and what the administration is doing to help.
Young people, millennials, are flocking to church.
It's not an exaggeration to say that we love to meet them and that we love to know their stories.
Crisis conditions in Venezuela continue tonight as the Trump administration says all options are on the table when it comes to ending the regime of Nicolas Maduro.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was in the region over the weekend, meeting with leaders to discuss the humanitarian disaster facing that country.
Nicolas Maduro is denying food that's sitting here. These aren't people that are starving because the country doesn't have wealth. These are people that are starving because the political leadership, the military thugs inside of Venezuela have destroyed their capacity to produce crude oil. They have destroyed the capacity to grow crops. They've denied their people aid that is sitting right at the border. You saw the bridge today, welded trucks, preventing food from getting, this is horrific. There's nothing else in South America that compares to this.
And unfortunately, the crisis in Venezuela shows no signs of letting up. Constant power outages, food shortages, and roving criminal gangs are driving more to leave every day. Estimates say around 1.5 million people fled Venezuela in the last 2 years.
I know we heard from Pompeo there, but the White House is definitely trying to change things.
All
Well,
right,
that's going to do it for Faith Nation.